The Pentagon brought me out to make a presentation actually about the Strait of Hormuz in January, and they asked me, the Arab leaders who were there, somebody came up to me and they said, would you appear on Al Jazeera TV? And my first thought was, my husband's going to kill me if I get kidnapped on the way to the station. But I thought, no, I'm here with the US government, it's okay, it's Qatar, they're an ally. And so I go to the station and I get on television and they asked me, Mrs. Jaffe, you're a recognized international oil expert. They say, are our governments doing enough to raise the price of oil? That's what they wanted to know. I made a 45-minute speech about how we need to have an international agreement to demilitarize the Strait of Hormuz and get Iran to sign it. I had the leaders there from China, India, all the Middle East countries. First question I get from the audience, Mrs. Jaffe, do you think we can get a higher price for our oil? I'm telling you, that was the mindset. And why is it the mindset? Because the more there's an open media in the Middle East and the more people think about what's in their personal interests, what's in their personal interest is to have a higher price of oil. What's in your personal interest is to have there be a lower price of oil. So standing up in the Middle East today and either running for office or appearing on TV, if you're a leader from the region and you're from an oil-producing country, right? Standing up and saying, we need to have a lower price of oil because otherwise there'll be alternative energy. Maybe that really should be their policy. And I gave them a lecture about substitution effects and do they care about their own generation or their grandson's generation. They probably laughed at me after they left the assembly room, right? The bottom line is, standing up in Saudi Arabia today and saying we need to get the price back down to $40 because that's what's going to be good for our long-term future, that would be like Senator Lugar standing up today and telling all of you that he is in favor of a $5 gasoline tax. Right? It's not going to happen. As we move towards democracy in Russia and the Middle East, they're going to vote for higher oil prices. Right? Why wouldn't they? It means they have more revenue, a richer society, they can have more roads and schools. People are going to want a higher oil price. Osama bin Laden has made the announcement in the Middle East that everybody is a puppet of the United States and they can get $125 for oil. That is what even the most educated leaders in the Middle East, they understand there's a market, they understand we can liquefy coal at $30 a barrel. It doesn't matter, it's popular sentiment. So a lot of education has to be done. But against that backdrop, we have this very popular opinion in the local public, in these oil-producing countries, that really does believe that the United States war on terror, Pew Center did a poll, 50% of Muslims believe the war on terror is designed to steal the oil. That is what we have to contend with. Today, they're still struggling to get to 31. That's 30 years later. They didn't go up, everybody. Their production ability went down. And if you think about the politics in the Middle East over the 80s and 90s, it was a fairly stable time in the Middle East. It wasn't as unstable as it is today with all the regional conflict and ethnic conflict that we see today. Terrorism was a much smaller, more contained problem than it is today. So when you think about, you are relying, you all don't realize it, but you are presuming for your children and the car they buy that OPEC is going to do something miraculous that they haven't been able to do in 30 years. Why are you assuming that? Why are we assuming that? It's not possible. It's not going to happen. And until we recognize that it's not going to happen, we're just sticking our head in the sand. And that's us, the citizens of this country, it's the leaders in our energy companies, it's the leaders in our car companies. We are all assuming something, thinking about next year, when it can't happen, when we know we have to do something different. So I ask you as Americans, what if those refineries had been permanently damaged? Suppose 2 of the companies or 3 of the companies were just really unlucky with the way the storm hit, and it had been a direct hit on the Houston Ship Channel instead of an indirect hit. And what if those refineries had never come back online? What if there was an announcement by BP or by Exxon that it was going to take them 3 years to repair the facility, or even a year to repair the facility. The Europeans weren't going to keep loaning us gasoline for their strategic storage. We were going to have rationing in this country. And what I'm telling you here today, not to be a naysayer or to be negative, is that it could happen. You have to understand, I'm not saying it will happen, but it's whether we can't control it. The oil companies do a spectacular job preparing for these storms, right? They have put new systems in place to make sure their personnel are safe, that their employees who live in these areas are safe, that they can come back to work faster than they did last time. They have done a lot of work to make sure that the response rebound time is even faster the next time this happens than it was last year. But we can't control the weather, and we can't control whether there's a direct hit. And if there's a direct hit and the damage to several facilities is higher than we expect, and it's going to take months and months and months to get back online, or years, then we are not prepared. You will be unable to go to work. Well, actually, you will be able to go to work. But those of us who live someplace and gasoline is the only choice, we will not be able to go back to work. And that is what we need to think about together as a nation, is how do we build resilience into our system? So I have this theme that I have been saying when I do speaking that I think is the most important thing. I try to explain to people, which I bet you don't even realize, or maybe you do because we have a lot of smart and well-read people in the audience. Almost no oil is used to generate electricity in the United States. We have 12 other things we use: coal, hydro, solar, wind, natural gas, right? We need to get that same kind of flexibility into our automobile system. And we already know, Honda already has a car that's on the market this year, or coming on the market this year, that they hid it so you wouldn't see it, that you can plug in and run on gasoline. And once I know there's a car that I can plug in and I can run it on gasoline, and I know for $40, $50, even if it's $80 a car, I can change a gasoline automobile to run on biofuel, then it's possible for me someday to come out into the world and buy a car that I have three choices, right? I could run it on gasoline if things go well and everything's fine and BP finds more oil and we find more oil here in the United States and we navigate through diplomacy a better relationship in the Middle East and things go well, run it on gasoline. But I'd like to, if there's a hurricane or some catastrophe in the Middle East, I'd like to be able to have the choice to plug it into my house and generate that electricity with coal or solar. I'd like to have the choice to run it on E85 or some other biofuel source. And the technology is there.